Hello, good afternoon, and happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. My name is Jane O'Leary, and I'm the Director of Education at Barrington Stage Company.
Hi, and my name is Sharron Frazier-McClain, and I'm the Community Engagement and DEI Coordinator at Barrington Stage Company.
Barrington Stage Company has taken the call from We See You White American Theater and Black Lives Matter to heart. The staff and board has written and made a commitment to the following guiding principles. We acknowledge that we are gathering on the ancestral homelands of the Mohican people. Despite tremendous hardship in being forced from here, today their community resides in Wisconsin and is known as the Stockbridge-Muncie community. We pay honor and respect to them and their ancestors as we commit to building a more inclusive and equitable space for all. Barrington Stage Company recognizes that we are a predominantly white institution that has historically benefited from systemic racism. We commit to anti-racism and anti-oppression throughout our organization. Black Lives Matter. We accept the responsibility to fight to end racial inequities in our theater and our industry. Barrington Stage Company is committed to a workplace free of discrimination on the basis of race, color, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, national origin, religion, age, or disability. Our work seeks to celebrate all members of our community and amplify the marginalized voices who are often silenced. It is our responsibility to prioritize and protect from discrimination and oppression those who make our work possible. We stand in solidarity against bigotry and racism. We will hold our artists, staff, board, audience members, volunteers, and donors accountable to these principles.
We are so excited to launch Black Voices Matters with this presentation of Hashtag Matter by Idris Goodwin on this day where we remember Martin Luther King Jr. Throughout the year, Black Voices Matter will support and encourage Black community members by offering a platform for Black creativity and self-expression in response to the Black Lives Matter movement. We are so grateful to have worked with wonderful actors and the director, all of whom will join us after the video for a talkback. Please enjoy Hashtag Matter.
Prologue.
We lived next door to each other as kids.
And now same city.
We were never that close during any of it, but we knew each other.
I see him here and there.
We were aware of one another.
We kept our space. Not consciously, we just ran in different spaces.
But we were always aware. Social war.
Another body. Another name. Another image has circulated. The latest body, name, the newest image to haunt.
It's shameful.
This is no time for apathy.
I liked it.
The fight for equality continues on.
Liked it.
And then I typed a hashtag and 3 words I thought anyone could get behind.
I didn't quite like that. I responded with a hashtag and 3 words. Nothing offensive, words I thought anyone could get behind.
I didn't quite like it, so I deleted it.
She deleted my response. Totally hypocritical.
My wall, my space, and yeah, I edit it. It's the one space where I can build the world I'd like to inhabit.
I respond to her posts a lot. We share the same algorithm politically.
My response was to remove it.
Erasure is never okay, so I responded, this is not a race issue. Not really. This is about abuse of power.
I responded, are you crazy?
I responded, we're talking about equality, the human experience. No time for stark divisions along racial lines. This is a time for us to recognize our shared humanity.
I deleted it.
I messaged her.
You messaged me.
We haven't seen each other in a while or spoken. The last time was at a concert. She was a little mad at me because the MC performed a song with the N-word in the chorus and she saw me singing along. She never said anything, but after the show, she was cold to me.
Messaged me.
Hey, Kim. I know it's been a while.
You felt like we needed to talk, needed to clear the air.
Can we sit down for coffee sometime? Sitting down.
I want to ask you what you meant, but I'm finding it hard to ask you. What I would rather do is just tell you what I think about what I thought you meant.
I can explain what I meant.
I'm sure you can, but can you explain what I read and what I took it to mean?
I just meant that we're all comprised of matter. Matter being that essential molecular element of which we are all built. Ordinary matter, like trees and water, solids and liquids.
But sounds, the voice, for example, was not always considered matter. Matter used to only encompass a select set of solid objects.
But all along, it was all matter.
What happens to matter split? Does it explode and decimate millions of bodies of color? And whose hands split that matter? What we're talking about are Black lives split, shaken until they become bombs.
Their lives, those lives, it's all ridiculous. We are here and we can decide the way this is going to go. This doesn't have to, it shouldn't be, and we don't have to ascribe. And aside, there was that summer after senior year of high school. We were both short on credits. All our friends took off. We had to stick around. We both ended up working at the library to make some extra cash. We kind of got close that summer. We talked about books, smoked joints on lunch break. That was the summer I got into R&B, and I turned her on to some indie rock. I thought, man, what a cool chick. There was that one night after our shift. We got those tall cans and decided to break into the school. We heard someone, so we ducked into the only open room we could find, the chemistry room. It was dark in there and we were super quiet. We drank more and started to get close. Maybe it was because things were coming to an end. We got close to, but we didn't. She stopped suddenly, said she had to go home. We were on the same side, Kim.
Are we?
Yes, we want the same thing.
After another man is laying in the street, your immediate impulse is to correct me, to talk semantics with me, to say, well, actually, Kim, I don't know what side that is. An aside. In particle physics, antimatter is material composed of antiparticles, which have the same mass as particles of ordinary matter, but have an opposite charge.
I don't think anyone is less or more or special.
When we say Black Lives Matter, do you think that's us saying we're special? Look at us, we're getting shot.
No, but it's sort of making your suffering worse than others. Wait,
What did you just...
that's not what I mean. It's saying your suffering is, I mean, what about in Africa? All the Boko Haram stuff, or women all over the world being assaulted, or gays and lesbians, Hispanics being deported, shot at border crossings, or hell, even poor white folks, Black communities who are bullied because of the crimes of others. And I'm all for civil rights, but looting, property damage, and just rage, it doesn't work. I mean, it's not strategic. All lives, Kim. That's all I'm saying. Let's pull the act from the context of race. We have to break this down to the root. human wickedness.
And sometimes humans kill humans because of their race.
Wouldn't it be great if... I just wish we could move on. Be ourselves, be individuals, our own perfect stars. Just be our own perfect stars. When we were kids, we'd have a block party. All the kids would be out and getting our faces painted like Spider-Man, bike races. We were just kids in the neighborhood. When did we start?
I was the only Black kid at that block party.
I didn't see it like that.
You didn't see I was Black?
I didn't treat you different.
But not everybody was like you.
And aside, she wasn't always like this.
And aside, I was silent. I used to be silent.
She used to be real easygoing, a cool chick.
I used to hold my breath, breathe shallow, up here in my chest.
We grew up the same way.
But the way we are perceived is different.
But that doesn't mean those perceptions are true.
The water and the tree are in the same forest, but are not the same. Different mass, different volume, different uses. Are you willing to decrease your mass? Just say it. Black lives matter.
Do white lives not matter?
Nobody is saying what doesn't matter.
But it's exclusionary.
It's contextual. In this climate, it relates to the splitting of Black atoms with no consequence.
And aside, I really want to leave. I feel sick. I want to hug Kim and tell her I'm sorry. But also, if I'm being honest, tell her to get over it. Life is hard and there's no measuring stick to suffering. She can change this just by being herself, not this angry Black woman.
And aside, I really want to let Cole off the hook. Drop this whole thing. Tell him it's all good. But I have swallowed myself so many times to make white folks feel less uncomfortable.
I just want to fix it.
Cole wants to know how we fix it. Wants me to tell him, but I just woke up this way. I don't know how to dig into the hearts, rewire the circuitry. Who does? All I'm trying to do is keep it together.
I want to tell her I am sorry.
I don't need apologies. I just want it to stop.
To say it is to admit that my life, in someone's eyes, people living, people dead, has mattered more than other folks. And I don't think it does, but someone at some point has believed that, and maybe my life has been better because of it.
That night in the chemistry room, when we got close, Cole and I, all those years ago, I was into it. I liked him. Until he put his hands in my hair. I thought about all those kids at school always asking to touch it. Can I touch it? And how they'd react when they did. And he had his hands in my hair. And I wondered how he thought it felt. Weird, funny, good. Then I thought about if he'd been with any Black girls before, and it was too much. So I told him I had to go home. So I did. I left, and that was the closest we ever got.
Week or two later, I sent Kim a message. Thanked her for the conversation. I told her we should be in touch more often, that I wanted to keep talking. Not just about this, but our lives in general. Nothing. That was that, I thought. But one morning, I went on my timeline. I saw her picture and her name being shared by everyone. They called it a failure to comply, failure to be silent. So she was made silent forever. She lives on now as a hashtag, but I still hear her voice hanging in the particles. Does the spirit have mass? It must. I can feel the weight.
need to say something, but the words won't peak. I need to say something, let me breathe. Oh, who benefits from impunity when I can't safely sleep? I need to say something. I'm gonna say something. I need to say something. I'm gonna say something.
We hope you all enjoyed this performance of Hashtag Matter. And at this time, we will have a live talkback with our director, our actors, and Black vocal leader, John Lewis. At this time, can you all please introduce yourselves? We'll start with the director, Melle, and we will go ahead to Mitchell, Kira, then John.
Thanks, Sharron. Hi, I'm Melle Powers. I directed this piece. It was a really beautiful experience, and I thank my actors so much for their generosity and what they brought to this. Thank you.
My name is Mitchell Gray. I am a Chicago-based actor and played Cole. So grateful for this opportunity to Melle, to Kira, to Sharron, to everybody, Barrington Stage, for putting on a production and something that, no pun intended, no pun totally intended, really does matter.
I'm Kira Sarai Helper. I'm a Boston-based actress, but I'm originally from the Bronx, New York. And yeah, echoing everyone else, I'm really grateful to be here and really grateful that I was able to be a part of this and also have my music be a part of this project as well.
Cool. Hello, I'm John Lewis. Happy Martin Luther King Day. I am currently serving as chairman of the Black Economic Council, and I'm the CEO of Reset Enterprises and a chief storyteller for Speakeasy Studios, which is our podcasting and storytelling studio here in the Berkshires. Super glad to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Let's go ahead and dive into this talk back. So for you viewers at home, you're more than welcome to drop your questions in the chat, and anyone will be able to answer them for you. So actually, I want to start with Melle. And Melle, I know I was a part of the process, but I kind of wanted you to share how you prepared the actors for this piece.
Yeah, thanks, Sharron. So we approached it by saying that we were going to have ground rules for conversation, and amongst them was everyone had to come and be ready to talk and to be really honest, and that maybe mistakes were going to be made, and that was okay. But we wanted to have a really frank and honest conversation about this issue. And so we started off with the ground rules, and then we went into some really beautiful New York Times documentaries that they have. And so one of them we watched was a short doc called A Conversation with My Black Son. And it shows Black parents and how they prepare to have a conversation with their Black sons about when they're pulled over by the police. And then the other documentary we watched was one called A Conversation with White People About Race. And it was basically 5 minutes of many white people talking about it, but their discomfort in even talking about race was such a great jumping off point when you put it next to the other video, because it really illustrated how for one group of people, it literally is a matter of life and death. And for another group of people, it's, something they'd rather not talk about. And so that's how we entered the world of this play.
Awesome, thank you. My next question is for John. So John, as a local leader of the Black community who is so passionate about educating and empowering the community, could you please share your initial reaction to this play?
I think for me, there were like 3 words that I could say it was context, complexity, and nuance. And I find that the conversation about race is very complex, but it's always very complex without the right context and nuance to the conversation. And I think that that was my overall reaction to the play, and to this overall dialogue between Black Lives Matter versus this whole notion of all lives matter. Of course, we understand that all lives matter, but when we, as a Black leader in this community, is really breaking down the context and the complexity and the nuance of how to deconstruct, institutionalized racism in a way that creates equity or equality. And then I think the other thing that stood out for me in this particular production is the different definitions of what people think equality actually means, and how that translates into the actual work in creating what we want to call equity. Because when you think about it, it was very interesting to hear, the conversation from, I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Cole,
yeah,
well,
yeah.
Mitchell, and then
Mitchell.
Character.
Yeah, it was interesting in that dialogue, it's you could tell this person has a good heart but has no idea about race and the history of race and how it affects and impacts institutions all along. So what is said sounds logical and very rational, but it's not that informed. You know what I mean? In terms of context, complexity, and its nuance in terms of history and how it relates and how it shows up. And I think that that's a big thing, that when you talk about being a Black leader in Berkshire County community, where you have very well-intentioned white folks, but they don't really understand how race manifests itself within institutions, So I think as a leader, you're as a Black leader, you bear the responsibility. Unfortunately, I feel like, to educating them on that complexity and the context and the nuance of race in order for you to just try to move the needle down the field 5 yards, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. We have a question in the chat, and this is for any one of the actors. How much of your own experience echoes your character?
That's a great question. I think, in anything in acting, right, you're pulling from your own experience. So it has to some degree. And we were this was obviously a topic we chatted about in the rehearsal process, but a lot of little things, whether it be personal experiences from or that have happened to me, or interactions I've had with other people. Growing up in a small town in Wisconsin, I very predominantly white. And so the type of character that we see in Cole, a lot of people I know, and has been me a lot of times in my life as well, with just not knowing, lacking that education and that awareness, and John put it so beautifully with the idea of just people just not knowing, not educating themselves and not being aware. So.
Yeah. And for me, this, again, the conversation that we had with Melle during the rehearsal process, but that I have my whole life gone to predominantly white institutions. And one thing that's different from my character Kim, is that Kim grew up in an all-white community. My neighborhood was mostly Black and Dominican folks. But the schools I went to were always predominantly white. And so I feel like I've been having conversations like this for years, even before Black Lives Matter was an organization. We had to have similar conversations, or the notion of constantly being othered, getting your hair touched or feeling exoticized all the time because you are so different, and people can't just admire being different by not touching you like a prize poodle. So those are just a few ways in which I connect with my character.
Thank you for sharing your experience. So I have a question for Melle, and it says, how did you work with the actors on the allegory to the word matter being used in a scientific sense as well as a literal sense?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time on that. A lot of time. Kira's smiling because she kind of got put on all the scientific part of it. We really deconstructed all the uses of the word matter and what they mean, from the physics, the scientific sense, from, who matters, what does it mean to matter, how do you matter? I have a very good friend right now named Rachel, and she has shown me this thing that showing up matters and how you show up matters. So in this conversation, in this context, Mitchell Cole showed up, but how he showed up was he showed up telling her about herself, right? So how we show up and what we do matters. And we spent a lot of time sort of weaving in and out of those different meanings. Kira, do you want to talk about the scientific elements of matter? I told you I was going to make you talk about it.
Pulling something up right now. So we talked about, I was looking some stuff up about just like matter and particles to refresh my memory from freshman year of high school biology. But like the idea that matter can be neither created nor destroyed, only changed, which I thought was an interesting way to look at our society and like what matters in our society, and that we can actually take energy and shift what matters to people. And then also the idea that Kim says something about like what happens when matter is split. And then we're talking about black atoms being split with no consequence. Because when particles and matter are split, a chain reaction happens, which we do see when we lose Black lives, specifically to police and vigilante violence, but without the consequence. So there's a chain reaction that has a final consequence, but we often don't see what that final consequence is. It's mostly the chain reaction of our like collective Black grief that gets shown.
Yeah, and I want to add to that. We talked a lot about grief and grieving, and that a lot of times the Black community is not allowed to grieve. And so what does it mean to publicly grieve, which is where a lot of the hashtags come from. And then the images I chose at the end, I went back and forth a lot about what I wanted to show. And ultimately we just had a very tumultuous last few weeks to cap a very tumultuous last 4 years to top a very tumultuous last 400 years. But I was going to go with some of the images from the riot on the Capitol. But what I decided I wanted to do, what mattered, was showing Black women in their full power. And so that's what I went with. That mattered to me. And that last shot is actually Kira at a rally that she led this summer. And that music was her song, an original song that she wrote and recorded. And so to me, that felt like what matters. And that's the image I wanted to go with.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. We have a question in the chat. And the question is, what was the most challenging part of working on this production? And that's open to anyone.
I'm gonna volunteer Mitchell.
Okay. Yeah, I was about to speak. You know I had you. I was gonna come through. The most challenging, I mean, this is obviously like we've touched on already in this talkback, but it's an uncomfortable topic to talk about, right? Like we're gonna be, transparent about it, because no matter where you fall on the spectrum of like you support Black Lives Matter, if you view things as all lives matter, like the Cole character, right? There's just like, it's uncomfortable because it's hard for everyone. So it was just this doing something on this, on the topic of race in the world we're living in now, what Melle just said, what we witnessed at, the Capitol 2 weeks ago now, in the last 4 years and on and on. It's like, this is hard, but it's so important. So like, let's push through this to tell a story that should be told, and highlight voices that need to be heard during all of this. And So yeah, the most challenging part was just like the content, right? It's like, even though I care deeply about it and was so excited and had the best experience, it was still hard.
Thank you, Mitchell. I appreciate your transparency. I have a question for John. John, as a local Black leader who really dives into this work, what is the next steps in keeping this conversation going?
Yeah, I saw that question you asked, and I was like, wow, you know, to me, one of the next steps I think is super important for all of us is continually to be curious and willing to learn. I think we live in a social media world where it's so interesting that we can take these hashtags and sound bites, but not move ourselves deeper into the research and the learning of what the experience really is and really means. And I think that's why I got back into this complexity and nuance, you know, scenario. So, you know, I think what we need to do is learn as a community, but also be willing. One of the things that came out is that Mitchell's character, I guess the character of Mitchell wasn't listening. And I think that there was this thing, this quote that I just saw that it talked about, we communicate a lot with each other, but we don't comprehend. So as a result, we get a lot of communication, but not a lot of comprehension. And I feel like that what we have to do as a society is stop talking, do more listening, and more comprehending of that. And that requires us looking not only deep into ourselves, but also deep into our history and researching things that we are not comfortable with researching. You know, because white folks have the privilege of not learning Black history. Well, Black folks don't have that privilege. So we're not even actually communicating within the same context. So think about that. If you're not communicating within the same context, then there's no comprehension. So I love what Melle did in the beginning in terms of focusing on the language and common language and common definitions, you know, and creating the right context to do this production. And to me, that's the formula for great dialogue and success moving forward. So that would be what I would see what we need to do as leaders. You know, all of us, not just me as a Black leader, but all of us as individual leaders, you know, moving forward is really, you know, look into that space, becoming a lot more aware and educated and researched before we have the conversation, and look for comprehension. There's this quote, I think it's in St. Augustine's prayer. It talks about seek to understand instead of to be understood. And that is like, I think if we carry that value, then it puts us in a space to where we actually have to really listen and comprehend. And then I think then we can begin to move forward with some type of dialogue that creates healing, but not only healing, it has to create an agreed upon equity where success is for everyone, as I say. And that has to be a platform that we strive for. So.
Yeah, I want to also add to that, the thing about that character, Cole, that Mitchell played so beautifully, was he did the thing a lot of people do. Like he wanted to talk around it. He wanted to be devil's advocate. As my friend said the other day, the devil doesn't need an advocate, right? And so there's a way that we get in these conversations where we talk about straw men and we do all this other stuff because it's a way to not get at the heart of what the problem is. And, you know, as we saw in the play, like they grew up in the same neighborhood next door to each other, but had completely different lived experiences as a young Black girl and a young white boy. And again, going to how you show up, he did not show up to listen to her experience. He showed up to tell her what her experience was. And so, yeah, there is a way we all, you know, not all of us, but many of us need to learn how to listen a little more fully.
Yeah, because, and I agree with you, Mel, because within that of him not listening and wanting and that character wanting to tell her what he thought or what it was means that there was an immediate invalidation of her humanity.
Right. That's right.
And when you have that immediate invalidation of that humanity, because when you're not listening, then what you're recreating is a trauma
Right. That's
of
right.
that person, and you're not moving towards healing. And that's that's so often,
Right.
that happens in the dynamic of, of what we're doing. And I think that, everybody wants to be affirmed in terms of who they are, from the soul level. So,
John,
and that means also understanding their experiences and validating their experience and how they see the world, whether you agree with it or not.
That's right. Sharron.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree. I actually want to put a pin right there because we have a comment and a question in the chat, and it kind of sort of speaks on a little further on where you are. And it says, I noticed there was a sentence from Cole saying something like, she used to be so chill. Now she's an angry Black woman. Can anyone speak to the stereotype and the misuse of the term anger?
Woo, how much time do we have? I mean, I'll start, but anyone else can jump in, because I was about to say that, he says, now she needs to not be this angry Black woman. And there's several things wrapped up in that. Just being a woman and not being able to express anger, being a Black person, not being able to express anger, being a Black woman. And, frankly, why wouldn't she be angry? And what's wrong with anger? Anger can be very healthy, but anger makes people uncomfortable, right? And then you put all those things on top of it, and it's a way to not hear someone. It's a way to attach to the anger and not to the message and say, I'm just not going to listen to you right now. So it's problematic. Who else would like to speak to that?
I would like to speak to that, and tag on the violent aspect of that term, the angry Black woman, that it frames our anger in a violent sense, right? And that is part of what gets people like Corinne Gaines and Sandra Bland killed, right? It's that idea that our anger is physically dangerous.
Yeah, it's weaponized.
So we need to then be silenced because our anger is physically dangerous, which again, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, it's just a term. And even if like we were talking to Cole and we said, this is why you shouldn't say this, he might be like, oh yeah, I didn't mean it like that, but why saying something like that and a label like that is putting my life in danger.
Yes, and I would say, to wrap that question up, as a Black woman myself, a lot of it is frustration and passion. So that misuse is sometimes generally just a misunderstanding. Standing at the top of a hill, yelling and expressing yourself, you're using the right words, but you're still not being heard. So a lot of the times it's looked at as anger, but if you really, really tap in, it's like, I'm here, I'm not invisible, and I deserve to be heard too. In any sense. But we're actually about to wrap up this talk back. But I have this final question for the actors, and Kara and Mitch, I would like you both to answer. If you could give your character a piece of advice in this situation, what would it be?
Kara, you ready to rock? You want me to?
you go for it. Go
all right. I mean, there's so many things I'd like to tell this boy. Because clearly, and it's all things we talked about, right? I think the main things are listen, learn, listen again, and do it actively. That's something we talked about in rehearsals. And I think John gave a better word for me, comprehension, right? Like comprehending what you're hearing rather than just hearing it, just listening. I think is something that I would give word of advice to every and anyone, but especially those that are not Black people, listening to Black experiences, Black voices, and learning. And then taking it upon yourself to educate, because that's another thing, like not making, because you have a Black friend, don't make them try to, tell me everything I need to do right. Like that's not how it works. Not one person has the answer. And that's talked about in the play, right? Like Kim can't tell Cole, he just wants to fix it. She doesn't have the answer because she's one person. There's she's not going to solve 400 plus years of racism and know the answer. So it's listening, it's educating yourself. And yeah, Cole's got a good heart, but he's got some work to do. And that's what I would tell him.
I think I would tell Kim to protect her energy and to pick her battles. You know, we can't, I think I've said this before, but like Black people didn't start racism. Black people can't end racism. And Mitchell just said something just now that made me think about delegating, in that men are more likely to listen to another man give them advice or say like, hey man, like what you said to that woman back there, that wasn't cool, right? Than a woman saying it. Same thing for racial conversations, that white people are going to be more receptive to hearing commentary from another white person about like, hey, so why do you think that? Why do you think that way? And I think it's very important to just, protect your energy as a Black person engaging in these conversations, that sometimes you may have a personal relationship with someone and you may care about that person enough to meet up with them in person and have such a conversation. And hopefully it doesn't take you dying for them to get it. But protect your energy and delegate if and when you can. I'm lucky to have white friends who have come in when I've said, can you talk to this person? Because I can't explain it. And they're like, yeah, I got you. So that's what I would tell her.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to thank our director, our actors, and John for joining us for this talkback after #Matter. Again, this is a series of short plays through Black Voices Matter. So we have 4 more plays that will be rolling out throughout the year. Stay tuned. And again, we'd like to thank you, and we hope that you enjoyed today's preview of #Matter. Have a good night.
Thank you.